Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming out tonight for C-SPAN Book TV and Nick Adams to do a presentation on his latest book, Class Dismissed. We're so happy to have you here. For those of you who do not know, I'm Sadie Adams. I am the wife of Nick Adams. Thank you. Now, if you've heard Nick speak before, you're in for a treat because this speech is going to be different than anything that you've ever heard before, as it's on his new book. One of my favorite things about being married to Nick is growing up knowing that the American dream existed, but getting to see it through someone who wasn't born here and wasn't raised here, getting to see him live out what exactly that American dream is. In just 3 short years, Nick has been able to travel the country. I've been with him for about 2.5 of those years of him traveling the country. I've gotten to meet people from all 50 states who confirm exactly what Nick is speaking about, that America is the greatest country in the history of the world, and that if you work hard and with determination, that you can do anything that you want to in this country. Nick says that success isn't guaranteed in this country, but if you work hard and you hustle, your success will be rewarded. And so getting to see that firsthand from someone who's living it every single day has been so incredibly special, particularly at a time where America is more polarized than ever. This country is going in a direction that we don't want to see it go because there's 2 very distinct sides who do not like each other very much. We need someone like Nick who can unite people. And if there's one thing that we should all be able to agree on, it's that we are lucky to be here and that this is a great country. That's Nick's message when he goes into elementary, middle, and high schools and speaks in all 50 states. So, without further ado, to hear it from the man himself, my husband, Nick Adams.
Thank you, Sadie. I appreciate it. You did really well. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we gather to do something unique, to do something that we used to do as a matter of course, but now is a path seldom travelled. Tonight we are not going to focus on our weaknesses or struggles, nor will we labour on our imperfections, lament our failures, or ascribe blame to guilty parties. Tonight, we are going to focus on what unites us as Americans and unties us as enemies. Tonight, we celebrate our amazing American adhesive, the glue to our greatness, on what makes our stars and stripes stick to so many, so different. 3 beautiful words: the American dream. It has no sibling, no cousin. It is deeply unique, incredibly exceptional, and the greatest gift of mankind to the world. That's what we are celebrating tonight. It was set up by our founders, esteemed men of incomparable legacies, that devised a society that would permit men and women to achieve way beyond what they would and could in other lands, that allowed ordinary people to be indomitable in the pursuit of their own personal goals, a society that understood that you cannot bring about prosperity by discouraging thrift, that didn't focus on strengthening the weak by weakening the strong, that knew you cannot help little men by tearing down big men, a society that refused to lift the wage earner by pulling down the wage payer, that rejected helping the poor by destroying the rich, that was aware that the brotherhood of man would not be furthered by inciting class hatred. These were just a few of the 10 cannots authored by Presbyterian minister Reverend William Böttger, born in Hamburg, Germany and immigrant to the United States. He also spoke of 7 national crimes, circumstances that limit or prohibit your own personal American dream from being possible. I don't think. I don't know. I don't care. I am too busy. I leave well enough alone. I have no time to read and find out. I am not interested. If that's you, you are consigning yourself to a dull and listless life, one defined by mediocrity. If you have that approach in life, you will fail. If you have had a passion bypass, you will never amount to much. If you pursue your life with disinterest, lethargy, or lassitude, my advice is to lay off the decaf. Drink some coffee. If you do not strive or demand perfection in everything that you do, you will fall short. If you do not get the little things right, you are guaranteed to get the big ones wrong. If you do not dream, nightmares will be more difficult to combat. You must discover your passion, plan your purpose, and execute your plan. It won't be easy. It never is. No life is without failures and confrontations. But life is about absorbing the blows, being wiser for them, and persevering because the possibilities are never exhausted. Think about our founding fathers. In every one of us, there is still a little bit of them. As a motivator in public school classrooms and assembly halls, I urge young Americans to know they are the descendants of immigrants and slaves who refused to accept the limits of the old world, that their forefathers took great risks and paid a great price to earn a better life, that this is who we come from, that their blood runs in our veins, that as Americans, as dreamers, as innovators, as those willing to upend the desk and start over, our legacy is unmatched. Our farmers, scientists, citizens and entrepreneurs offered peerless ingenuity, and we harnessed it. Few of us realize the power of the American dream before us and with us now, and their impact on the world we live in today. The American dream is responsible for the following, and imagine life without them. This is hardly an exhaustive list. Refrigeration, the airplane, the computer, the communication satellite, email, the GPS, the internet, the credit card, cable television, the weather satellite, Facebook, YouTube, Netflix, Amazon, movie and television streaming. We hoisted our flag on the moon more than 2 generations ago, and we mapped the human genome a decade ahead of schedule. All of the life-saving drugs administered around the world are the product of American pharmaceutical research. And it was Norman Borlaug, an American agronomist, who developed a high yield of disease-resistant crops that defied the projections of worldwide famine and single-handedly fed the entire world. Billions of people are alive today because of him. Sadly, most of our young people have never heard of him. All of this success has been achieved with less than 5% of the world's population. Talk about punching above your weight. Think of the passion, purpose, and resolve in all that inventive genius. Opportunity, not dependency, created these successes. I always tell people, in America, you can be anything you want to be. So don't dream small. Make it a dream worth living. I have dedicated my life to inspiring people to achieve their dreams, escape the quicksand of mediocrity and find the solid ground of greatness, to sever the shackles of doubt and negativity and instead wear the cape of confidence and conviction, to press on even when they are tired and discouraged and ready to quit, to embrace the aristocracy of America, not because there is one, but because it's a beautiful one, one unlike any other. It's not based on birth. It's not based on need. It's not based on social rank. It's based on individual guts, individual effort, individual vision, individual passion, and individual tenacity. Anyone and everyone can be a part of this aristocracy. It doesn't matter if you come from a big city or a town so small you can't find it on a map. The American aristocracy is made up of people from all walks of life, all races, and all creeds. The American dream is rich in determination and destitute in diffidence. The American dream will not come to those that conform. It will not come to the leech or the parasite. It will come to the self-starter and the go-getter. It will not belong to the tepid, only the intrepid. It will more likely be the domain of the risk-taker than the risk-averter. These are the lessons that I have learned in my life. These are the lessons I try to impart to every audience I speak to. I want every American, from Florida to Oregon, from Washington to Maine, to know how much of a head start they have on achieving their dreams just by virtue of living in this country. I would know. I wasn't born here. I wasn't raised here. I didn't go to school here. No one in my family ever lived here. But I always wanted to come here. And coming here is the best thing that ever happened to me. For as long as I live, I will never forget that in no other country on earth is my story even possible. I believe in the American dream. This belief comes from my unyielding faith in the decency and generosity of the American people and the brilliance and uniqueness of the American idea. But it also comes from my own story. I am the son of a mathematician and a nurse with Greek and German heritage. I've lived in 3 different countries and speak 3 languages. I've gone to some of the best schools in the world. I've been immersed in different cultures my whole life. I have friends who are Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, and Buddhist. Friends that are Indian, Sri Lankan, Italian, Chinese, Korean, Serbian, and Lebanese. I believe the American dream is central. There are many foreigners, perhaps hundreds of millions, who aspire to the American dream. They will do anything to reach America and to commence their search for it. So it is not only Americans who strive to reach their American dream, but untold millions who do not have the means because of the way their current birthplace is set up. While on paper, my successes in Australia were many, my joys were few. When it came to my dreams, I was squashed, squished, skelched, and suppressed. While America is a society built on being the best, Australia demands conformity. America demands creativity. In Australia, I was a square peg in a round hole. Since coming to America just 3 years ago, I have built a $1 million organisation. I employ 6 people. I'm a regular on national television. I've been to the White House several times, been aboard Air Force One, been interviewed by Tony Robbins on national television. C-SPAN has done a 3-hour documentary on my life. I field calls personally from governors, congressmen, senators, White House officials, and business giants. I have received the highest honorary award in 4 different states. I am in a different city almost every other day and have now spoken to audiences in 40 of the 50 states. My book, Class Dismissed, was featured in the whole window of the Barnes & Noble on Fifth Avenue in New York for the entire month of February. I'm now married to an American who carries within her the blood of military veterans who fought in several wars, an inheritance we will pass on to our children. My time in America has led me to honours far beyond any dreams or ambitions I had ever nursed. As I tell school students, locked within you is a dynamic, thinking, feeling, creative human being. But sometimes following your dream is like driving in a bad snowstorm. You might be following taillights at 5 miles an hour until you finally get to where you are going. But if you persist and you keep going, you'll get to your destination. I'll tell you something about America. It doesn't offer much of a hammock, but it does offer a trampoline. And that's why this is the best place for dreams. Never has there been a nation so forgiving of failure. Never has there been a place of unlimited chances. Never has there been a culture so in love with redemption. Where failure in other societies leads to catcalls and isolation, in America, every setback is a set-up for a comeback. There is no reason to hold on to the lingering effects of a previous failure. Our history is replete with men who failed constantly and yet have a permanent place in history. Among them, Abraham Lincoln, Walt Disney, Colonel Sanders, P.T. Barnum, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Winston Churchill, J.K. Rowling, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. When I go around the country and speak to schools for FLAG, I ask students, what do you think is hindering you? What is stopping you? What obstacles are in your way? And it is always the same answer. In Title I schools, students tell me that they are poor and have no money and no way to make bank. And so I tell them this story. In the early 70s, there was an unknown actor trying to make it in New York. He moved to California, but things weren't going so well there either. As a matter of fact, things were so bad, he had to sell his dog because he couldn't afford to feed it. And then one day, he saw something that gave him an idea to write a script about a man who was going to stand up to life, take a shot and go the distance. Within 3 days, he'd finished the script. Some Hollywood producers read the script and loved it, except for one thing. They didn't want him to play the main character. It was too much of a risk at the box office. They offered him $360,000 for the script, but only on the condition he couldn't be in the movie. Now remember, the actor had no car, $106 in the bank, and had sold his dog to pay the bills. But he knew he'd never forgive himself if the movie ended up being a success and he wasn't in it. He believed in it too much. So he rolled the dice on it. And eventually, the producers relented and gave him $1 million to make the movie, starring himself. Now, $1 million, even in the 1970s, was an extraordinarily low amount for a film budget. Using friends and family in the cast, handheld cameras, and only using one take to film most of the footage, they came in just under budget. The movie went on to receive 9 Oscar nominations, win 3 of them, including Best Picture. It grossed over $200 million and was the beginning of a movie franchise that earned over $1.4 billion at the box office. The movie was Rocky. The actor was Sylvester Stallone. He's the American dream personified. Tenacity, risk, passion, self-belief, resilience, it's all there. A public school student at East Allegheny Junior High in the eastern suburbs of Pittsburgh told me recently that he was consigned to bad luck, that almost every time he tried something, something terrible would happen, and that he was just sick of it. So I told him the story of Ruth Fertel, a lady who needed money. She was a single mum with 2 kids to raise, and her job as a Tulane University lab technician just wasn't cutting it. The ad in the newspaper seemed to jump out at her. For sale, Chris Steakhouse. A veteran New Orleans restaurateur, Chris Madalik, was selling his business. "I can do that," said Ruth positively. That was a bold statement. Having experience running a restaurant was not something on Ruth's resume, but she had faith in God. She believed in herself, and she knew that the name Chris Steakhouse had great value. For 40 years, they'd built up a loyal clientele. All she had to do was keep it going. So Ruth Fertel mortgaged her house for $18,000 to buy the restaurant. From that day forward, the woman with a degree in chemistry and physics learned restaurant management on the job. "I don't know whether I was naive or just plain stupid, but I never thought I would fail," she said years later. "The hours were terrible, but customers saw how hard I was working and they wanted me to succeed. Besides, I thought my employees would respect me more if I worked right alongside them, and so I did." For the next 10 years, her business grew stronger and stronger. They went from selling 35 steaks a day to 250. Then disaster struck. Her restaurant burned to the ground. She owed a large sum of money, so if she didn't reopen right away, she'd be bankrupt. More than that, being out of sight, out of mind for any length of time would be deadly for her business. What to do? Ruth was in tears when she arrived at her banker's office, hoping he might have an idea. "Why don't you just reopen in the building you already own down the street?" suggested the banker. Ruth thought about it. It wasn't a bad idea. She'd purchased the other location nearby for wedding receptions and private parties, but how could she get it ready quickly? Then a stroke of good luck, something that often happens to those with the right attitude. It just so happened that a man who did construction was in the bank at the time, said Ruth. He said he could get my new location open in a week, and he did. But just as they were about to move in, Ruth was given more bad news. Her attorney reminded her that the original agreement stipulated that the name Chris Steakhouse could only be used in the original location. By moving to a new address, she could be sued. Now what to do? She couldn't very well change the name of a business that she'd spent a decade building up, not to mention the untold value of the prior 40 years in which the restaurant operated under that name. Ruth thought about it for a moment. She said a quick prayer. I don't have time to do a marketing study on the name, and I can't afford a lawsuit. So just put my name in front. That's it, she said decisively to her attorney. And again later that day to her sign maker and menu printer. They all looked at her blankly. Just add my name in the front of it, she repeated to them. Just call it Ruth Chris Steakhouse. Today, there are 90 of them. That was a story told in an incredible book called When God Winks at You by Squire Rushnell. Another parent at a school in Missouri whose student was in the audience at one of my presentations about my book, Class Dismissed, told me that my message about entrepreneurship over college in some cases was too cavalier and too risky. This made me think about the story of Sam. He was the son of a small-town Oklahoma banker. He and one of his brothers had put together a chain of 15 Ben Franklin franchises after buying their first five and dime with a $25,000 loan in 1945. Sam proposed building bigger stores with smaller profit margins in small towns all around the country, but was shot down by Ben Franklin executives. So at the age of 45, he went out on his own. Most businessmen of that age would have played it safe, but not Sam Walton. He opened up his first Walmart and began amassing a family fortune that today is more than $175 billion. Billion dollars. And then there was Fred Luster, a steel worker until he was laid off. He didn't groan or mope. He'd always had a gift for cutting hair. So he became a barber. He discovered that his gift was not just for cutting hair, but for the entire field of personal grooming. Fred, whose education was forged in steel mills rather than university classrooms, built Luster Products, a multi-million-dollar corporation. As I tell students regularly, if Fred Luster could reinvent his life, why shouldn't you be able to overcome any obstacles in your own path? For centuries, entrepreneurship has been the path to the American dream. In my book, Class Dismissed, I urge young people to not follow the crowd, but do what is right for them. If you are not going to be a doctor or a lawyer, then college is not a must. A far more important quality than merely ticking a checklist is having the strength of character and purpose to find opportunities. Someone who had that strength of character and purpose was George. He was a scientist and a teacher who encouraged the planting of peanuts to improve the lives of farmers. At first, the farmers thought he was nuts, pardon the pun. But then after several successful crops, they thought he was a genius. But then life tossed up a challenge. Everyone planted peanuts. The market became flooded. Peanut demand plummeted. Peanuts rotted in the fields. Farmers became discouraged and negative. We were fools for listening to you, they told George. George was condemned as short-sighted. But retreat and capitulation were not in his nature. He returned to his laboratory and emerged in triumph. His research led to more than 300 commercial applications for the peanut. He made milk, margarine, mayonnaise, soap, cooking and rubbing oils, cosmetics, flour, ink, shoe polish, shaving cream, cheese, chili sauce, shampoo, and bleach. Today, George Washington Carver is a household name. The questions that I ask, the questions that prompted me to write Class Dismissed are: do you know your purpose? Do you have a roadmap for your life? Have you made a list of the things that inspire you the most? Have you been able to put together a concept that would allow you to incorporate some of the things that you are passionate about? Is your why big enough to find the how to make it happen? The cemeteries of the world are full of unfulfilled dreams. That's why it's so critical to change your life and follow your dream. Achieve it. Use your life up. I want to champion the opportunities that are everywhere for those that see them nowhere. If you're not there yet, don't worry. As you continue to work on your roadmap, the vision for your life will become clearer. Challenge yourself. Living your purpose is a lifelong process. Always use your hardships and impossible circumstances to find opportunity and a new strategy. At the Battle of the Ho Sin Reservoir in 1950, Marine General Louis Chesty Puller, when asked about being surrounded by the Chinese at a ratio of 29-1, replied simply, "Great news, men. We can attack in any direction." That's the kind of thinking we all need. Dare to be great. Dare to live. Dare to love. Dare to try. Dare to dream. Have unflinching zeal. Wield unbending resolve. Own an unshakable sense of self-belief. Be on fire with energy. Be the flame that refused to be snuffed out. And then there will be no problem you cannot solve and no destiny you cannot fulfill. I'm a product of the American dream because I stand on the shoulders of giants before me. It is their bravery and determination that sustains me. And it is their legacy that FLAG is determined to preserve for generations to come. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.